Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest, Sunny Joy McMillan, and she's here to share with us her new book, Unhitched. Unlock your courage and clarity to unstick your bad marriage. Now, Sunny is one of my favorite people. She's a recovering attorney and a practicing master life coach. She hosts the Sunny in Seattle radio show, which is a weekly show that airs on Fridays between 9 and 10 a.m. Pacific. She is passionate about empowering women to make relationship choices based on their heart and spirit. So let's welcome to the show, Sunny Joy McMillan.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's just such a joy to have you here. And when I heard you had this book out, I had to have you on the show. And man, it is a great book. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. That means so much. I know we've worked together in other capacities, so this is so fun to be on your show and in this seat for once.
Yeah, it's not the hot seat. Don't worry. But, I love your book because it does talk about how to navigate when we get kind of stuck in relationships and marriages. And, so for our listeners that are new to you and new to your story, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'd love to. And I will say, actually, Marianne, before I even dive in, I was in a very high conflict marriage. I was a practicing attorney. My ex-husband was also a trial attorney. And so we were like kerosene and fire from day one. And we ended up with a very beautiful post-divorce friendship. And the reason I wanted to mention this, I looked at the calendar this morning, of course, looking at my day, and I realized this is my ex-husband's birthday today. And he passed away in June of 2018. So this is the first birthday that's come around since then that he is not with us. So this is a really meaningful day to me to be able to speak with you. It's special. I've already talked to him in my meditations and prayers this morning, so I know he's listening in as we talk. But yeah, so I spent about the first 30 some odd years of my life creating a life that was very much aligned with my more social self, not my essential self. So I was very worried about pleasing my parents and what would my peers think of me, impressing people, not disappointing people. And so I ended up in a career as an attorney. I ended up in a marriage that was incredibly high conflict, even though it looked perfect from the outside. I think by all accounts, my ex-husband was incredibly successful. And so we had the Instagram perfection going on, but open the closed door and look behind it, and you're going to see pretty dysfunctional marriage. That was pretty high conflict from the get-go. So I ended up, after, we were together, I think all together 12 years total. At a certain point, I realized that and one of the primary catalysts, there were several, but one of them was the writing of Dr. Martha Beck. And she is probably the biggest teacher of my heart in this lifetime. And I discovered her and realized I was not in the right life. And it doesn't mean, for everyone, that doesn't mean changing the outer scenery, by leaving the career, leaving the marriage. But for me, that was what felt like what was in the highest and best interest. So I ended up leaving the marriage, leaving that career, leaving my home state of Texas that I'd been in for most of my life. And I'm now a practicing life coach. I help primarily women, but I've got some few brave men clients, a few of them, those who are feeling stuck in their marriage or their relationship, answering that question of whether to stay or go. And if you do decide to go, that's not the right answer for everyone, and there are definitely some things that can be done to improve if you do decide to stay together. But if you do decide to go, how to get divorced gracefully. And that was something that's been one of my biggest, I think, accomplishments, is going from such a high conflict marriage to this really, it was a collaborative process divorce, and then a really, really beautiful post-divorce friendship, which when he passed in June of 2018, I could say that we'd offered all apologies that needed to be offered. We'd talked about all of the things that needed to be talked about, and there really were no words left unsaid. So it was to let him go, at least from physical reality, we were in a good place, and I feel very blessed for that.
It really sounds like going through the divorce really gave you both the opportunity to find a path of forgiveness that wasn't really possible before.
Absolutely. And I have to give credit. I had a really good therapist. For anyone going through this process, whether it's a coach, a therapist, a trusted ally of some sort, to have someone there who can be a sounding board and be a compassionate witness. I had that, and she actually suggested a structured separation, and it's something that I write about in my book. It's a little bit different than that, I think, traditional exit ramp to divorce that separation can be. And it allows you, if you've been in a high conflict setting or you've had some trauma within the relationship, it can be really good, because if you've been in constant conflict, you're in your limbic system, basically, and to be able to let that conflict dissipate enough where you can get back into your prefrontal cortex and actually make decisions from a more rational place, and also bring in, heart and spirit, gut, all that good stuff. It can be really important. And so for us, to get to that point of forgiveness, we needed a significant amount of space for a good amount of time. And it wasn't just time healing it and space healing it. We put in a lot of work to get to that place. It wasn't always easy. It was awkward. We didn't really know what we were doing, but that's why I wrote the book, because if it was possible for us, I think there is potential for just about anyone. I mean, unless you're married to a sociopath, a narcissist, a psychopath, I think if you've got two willing partners, even if you've had a pretty high conflict scenario, it's possible to get to that good place.
I think that's so important, because there's so many people that when divorce happens, the marriage ends and it's ugly, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I would agree with that. And, I will say, for me, I spent the majority of my marriage really pointing the finger at my ex-husband. He was a powerful litigator. He had a hair-trigger temper. Every fight felt like I was on a witness stand. But in reality, I was an equal participant in co-creating the relationship and the problems that we had. And I just want to clarify, when I say high conflict, it was not abusive. We were just at each other's throats. Pretty much, there was very little that we couldn't get in a fight about. And so it was really a matter, when I stepped away from it, and really finding some teachers like Martha Beck, like Byron Katie, who in a really safe way allowed me to look at my part in creating it. And I realized it was safe, and it was actually incredibly empowering to take radical responsibility for what I had done to help create that situation. And I had never done that before. And to step out of that victim mentality and to say, I was a co-participant in this, was really a huge part of the healing. And that really, when I didn't come at him with the finger pointed and accusatory, I came at it with grace. I wouldn't say gratitude for what we did right. Apologies for what I knew that I had done on my part, without, justifying it that he started it. It really brought his defenses down, and it allowed us to approach it from a place of curiosity. And that was huge for us. We'd never been able to do that before.
Wow. And what a place to come from, because it almost seems like society has this thing where if you have an ex, I mean, I know a lady who she has, Darth Vader's entrance walk as the ringtone for her ex.
Oh, goodness.
So, so you listen to this and you're like, that sounds very evil and daunting, and you've got all these thoughts, but that's what she's kind of portraying. So I really appreciate your approach, because number one, you're also not saying that people need to get divorced in order to have a good relationship. There are many stages that people can go through, and some it's okay and some it's not. They can still work on the relationship and retain the relationship and get back to what they maybe were dreaming of. But also that there's this, this kind of love that we have once for our spouses that, instead of being of pure hatred.
Yeah, exactly. And I run a divorce support group here in Seattle, and many of the people who attend that are on the other side of divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and still carrying some pretty strong emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And I could very easily have seen myself being one of those people where we just basically, I would have had that same ringtone coming right out of my out of my marriage at that time. But there's a point where it does it serve you to hold on to that? And one of the questions that I love that Byron Katie asks is, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? And you can hold on to those stories as long as you want. I know many people from encountering them through my support group, and even some potential clients that have come through the door who really aren't willing to let go of the stories. And that's okay. You can hold on to them for a lifetime. I found that I didn't like who I was when I held those stories. My body didn't feel good. My psyche didn't feel good. And I was willing to explore the possibility of another way. And when I did that, I was pleasantly surprised that my ex met me halfway. I had no idea he would do that, but he did.
Well, and so on that note, how did your ex feel about this book before he passed?
Yeah, it's funny, Marianne, because I knew that I wanted to write about this, and I knew I wanted to share the tools that we had used to get to that healing place, because we stumbled around a bit, but it ultimately worked, and I want people to have access to that if they don't think it's possible already. But I didn't think it would happen. I wrote the book in 2017 into the beginning of 2018. And I felt an urgency about writing it then, and I didn't really understand that urgency, but I honored it. I put a lot of things on hold, and I knocked out the manuscript. I had a writing coach, and I was able to knock it out in several months' time. Not knowing, my ex died unexpectedly, not knowing that my ex-husband would die about 6 months after I finished the manuscript. And I feel so blessed because it was important to me that he felt honored in the writing of it, that I portrayed things in a way that felt accurate to him. And so he was absolutely a vital part of the manuscript. He would review chapters. He reviewed the author's note. And he said he thought I got it right. And that was important to me. I didn't want it to be a one-sided tell-all or something like that. I mean, I am very honest about what our life looked like in the conflict. But yeah, so he gave his stamp of approval, and it was not even a month within me turning in the manuscript, like the final, no more edits to be made, and he passed. So it was, of course, there's no part of me that wants him gone off this planet. I had so much respect and adored him, but I am so glad that I wrote it when I did, because he wouldn't have been around for it had I waited any longer.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. I mean, I don't even have better words for this, but just the perfect time for you to write the book when you did.
Yeah, and I would for anybody out there listening, whether it's a book that you feel called to write or some endeavor that you feel the intense urge to do, I cannot tell you how important it is to honor those. And I, not knowing the outcome, I'm so glad that I did. I've learned sometimes the hard way. Fortunately, with this book, that wasn't one of those occasions, but honoring those urges. I mean, we have those for a reason. I love the way Liz Gilbert talks about it. They're the muses that really tap on your shoulder. And if you don't answer them, whatever it is needs to come through someone. And if you're not going to be the willing participant to step up and do it, it will, I think, it could move on to else. And so, or you won't, or for example, in my case, the person would pass away before it ever was done. So honor those urges. They're there for a reason.
Well, you talk about that in your book, and we're going to get to that in a little bit because I've got a lot of questions here.
Oh, great. I love questions.
I got them. Well, and I think it's important for our audience. I'm so glad that they were able to hear just how, in some ways, it was, even though you wrote the book and you did all the work, it was somewhat of a co-creative experience with your ex because he was able to review it and kind of put his stamp of approval on it. before things went along. You talk about because you do very honestly talk about your married life and how you felt. You guys are kind of like oil and water because you're just both these strong-willed individuals. At what point did things come to to a point where you're just like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm not feeling fulfilled.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify with that, Marianne, because I have a lot of people ask, okay, number one, if you were like oil and water, or what I'd later call, kerosene and fire from the beginning, why did you get married? And I will say we connected on some really deep fundamental levels like spirituality and philosophy and politics and our values. And so it was like, you put two stubborn attorneys together and we're thinking, and I, quite frankly, I wasn't real sure what an awesome marriage was supposed to look like. I think it's unique to, each situation, but, the general things that were important to me, I didn't really know what those were to be going in. So we stuck it out. And when he proposed, I very happily said yes. I figured that was the route that we were going. So then put us, and we didn't live together before marriage. And so you put us in the situation of living together, and it kind of amplified all of the conflict. And, Marianne, it reached a point, I had a couple of catalysts, as I mentioned. The writing of Dr. Martha Beck articulated what was happening for me so viscerally and tangibly. And I thought, oh my gosh, the light bulb went off. And I thought, this is not, I have a choice. This is not, I can create, and have a vision of what I want a marriage to look like. And I am so sorry, but this is not what I want for my life anymore. I don't think this is what a marriage has to look like. And we had so much professional intervention. And I'm saying this for anybody out there, who might relate to this. We had so much counseling, and it didn't matter what kind of conscious communication they were trying to teach us, or we just could not seem to pull it together and be kind to each other and communicate well. So it was about 7 years into the marriage, and I realized this is not what I want, and I started just praying for peace. I didn't know what I wanted except peace, because we'd never had that. And just the breadcrumbs started appearing that gave me a sense of a way out. And my ex was not a huge fan of the idea of divorce. He wasn't even right up to the courthouse where we went and did the divorce ceremony, as I call it, together. But I knew that it was in my highest and best interest not to remain in the relationship, because we had every chance in the world to do it right, and we never did. And I really think it took the time and the distance and the really intense personal work to get to the place where we did post-divorce. Marianne, I don't know that ever would have been possible while we were married. I can't, I have a hard time seeing that.
Well, I totally get it. I mean, there are some people that we can get along with great as friends, but move in together, and be married, might kill each other, so, or have things just implode from any little simple thing that happens, And I would think you probably get that a lot from the clients that you work with, that they feel like, they're in this place where, it's just not making sense anymore.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of people, and I was one of these people, Marianne. So I'm not. I definitely will want to own up to the fact that this is the boat that I was in back in the day. But a lot of people think, if I just had a different person in my life, if I just had a different job, if I just lived in a different city, and I think that may be true, but a lot of people don't realize that if you do some inner scenery work, instead of just changing the external scenery, that it can totally either revitalize the relationship or give you a new lease on life. And you can really create your own happiness a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to change people or jobs or cities. So that's one of the first things is we explore, okay, let's do the inner scenery work. And then when you clean your side of the street, when you do your inner scenery work, then if you still know, and this is where I think a good connection to your intuition, your inner wisdom, your higher self, all of those things, whatever you want to call them, that's when you know that, okay, maybe this just isn't the right person. And in my case, Marianne, I mean, I went down the aisle with a lot of red flags. There was a little voice that said, this is not the person that you need to be marrying. And I went in, suppressed those down and thought, nope, this is what my life is supposed to look like. I'm just going to just barrel on through. So for some people, who come in my office, we can do the inner scenery work, and it's really surprising. And then they can stay in the relationship or whatever that looks like. But for, some people, once you clean your side of the street, you still know it's not the right relationship. And at that point, it takes some courage. And that's where I think having someone walking alongside you can be helpful in terms of a therapist or a coach. But to be able to take the courageous action once you're really clear, you know what that is because you've done the work.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I mean, just from a personal standpoint, I've had a coach probably going on close to 15 years now, different coaches over that time. But it is so important to get that outside perspective, to bring, if it's business, relationships, whatever, just to bring another viewpoint, to the table.
Yeah, because if you think about it, from ages about 0 through 7, we're in a really slow brainwave state, theta or delta, basically. And that's by design so that we absorb everything around us and we can learn how to be a human quickly and easily. But the problem is, if your family of origin or whatever adults were around you, teachers, religious leaders, if you have not absorbed a value system that aligns with your beliefs as an adult, then you're really running up against some entrenched old subconscious beliefs that could really be hindering you from stepping into the right life. And that could mean leaving a marriage. It may not. For me, it did. But yeah, really having someone that can help you identify those beliefs. Like, for example, I was raised in a really conservative, small area in Texas, and it was conservative on all fronts, socially, politically, religiously. And so I heard the phrase from the time I was little, divorce is not an option. And so I get to be an adult, and I'm incredibly unhappy in a very dysfunctional marriage, and I just have this mantra that firing from my subconscious that divorce is not an option. And it took someone actually identifying, hey, Sunny, you got that belief running. Can we look at it? And I looked at it and I thought, whoa, wait a minute, that's not true. Divorce is an option. It absolutely is. I've seen it work for many people to increase the health and wellness in their life. And I think I'm one of those people. But, as you say, having someone to walk with you and to help you identify that stuff is really important.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, in your book, you talk about wise, authentic self. And we kind of touched on that briefly, not with the same terminology just a little bit ago. Can you share with our listeners what that is?
Yeah, and I think different teachers call this different things, but to me, there's an umbrella for all of it that it all falls under. So I say wise, authentic self. For example, Martha Beck calls it essential self. Certain spiritual teachers might call it your higher self. So for me, your wise, authentic self is that part of you that is the most inherent you. And I think I'm a spiritual person. I do believe that we have a part of us that resides, in the ethereal realms, like a soul. And so for me, it's the part of you that stripped of all the bells and whistles. It's your personality, your sense of humor, and it doesn't matter where you were raised, whether it was, the United States as a Christian or perhaps in the Middle East as a Muslim or any other place it doesn't matter. This part of you would transcend any externals. It's just the core of who you are. And then you've got the part of you that develops in response to other people, the more social self. And that's the part where, depending on your family of origin and what's going on culturally and religiously around you, it's the part of you that develops to please and not disappoint other people. And that's pretty hardwired, because, as little humans, we have to fit in with the adults around us so that we're taken care of. So we often really look to them for how we're supposed to act and what we're supposed to say. And so the problem is when you get to be an adult, sometimes that social self is in conflict with that wise, authentic self, So really figuring out what self you're acting from and honoring that essential self, the wise, authentic self, your higher self, that part of you that really I think is most tied to the roadmap to your dreams and your best life.
Once people start down this path, is it really difficult for them to create a new life?
That depends.
$1 million question, right?
Yeah. I think for some people who are not so tied to that social self, if you don't care what anyone thinks and you're pretty confident in your own in your own value and worth, it can be very easy to move into a new place in your life or a new chapter. For someone like me, I'll just use myself as the example. I was so worried about what people would think, and specifically, people from my hometown I hadn't seen in years. I didn't even realize their voices were so strong in my head. So for someone like me, it took years, Marianne, to really fully step out of that and embrace a new life. And I still have to do my work pretty much on a daily basis to really examine those thoughts and continue to free myself from a lot of the baggage, So, I think it depends. But it absolutely, I mean, this is my greatest joy is walking this with my clients because to see the transformation that is possible when you leave things behind that don't serve you. And that can be done within the bounds of a marriage, or it can be done through divorce. I'm not saying, again, I just want to emphasize it doesn't necessarily mean divorce for everyone. But to be able to walk that path and to see what is possible when you unhitch from the things that aren't serving you, it feels good.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been talking with Sunny Joy McMillan in regards to her new book, Unhitched. Unlock your courage and clarity to unstick your bad marriage. Again, if you'd like to learn more about Sunny's book, you can at her website, unhitchedbook.com, and we'll have the link below. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Sunny Joy McMillan, and she's sharing with us her new book, Unhitched. Unlock your courage and clarity to unstick your bad marriage. Now, before we went for break, we were talking in regards to belief systems, and we all have programming that we've been taught since birth. We are in a time now, and I'm seeing more people question those learned behaviors, those old belief systems. And I have to really applaud you because you're really blazing a trail for women and teaching them how to peel back those layers so they can get to the core of their authentic self, something that we all want to do.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I didn't know, and I have many clients who feel the same way. I didn't know for a long time that I actually got to choose. Like there wasn't one truth that was, if either I accept it or I don't. Mm-hmm. I actually could look at all of the various options out there and to know that I am empowered enough and that I am allowed to choose different than the plate that had been handed to me, of all the platter of all the beliefs. To know that you have that choice is, it's just, that is powerful.
I have to ask this personally because I've been on my spiritual path for some time, and as soon as I come up against a belief system, I'm like, oh, I've got this, and I think I'm good, and then another one pops up. Are you finding? Because it seems like something that no matter how long you're on the path, different ones keep popping up to say, hey, are you still working on this?
Oh, absolutely. So my I'll just give you an example. I was just talking about this last week with someone. My part of the reason I got myself into the pickle that I did with the career that was did not feel like a calling, was not a great fit for me, ended up in a marriage that was not a great fit, was because my entire self-worth was wrapped up in how much education I have and pretty much how successful my husband was. Growing up in the community that I did, most women that were in the small community, they did not work, and it was never an option that a woman would have an entrepreneurial endeavor or would create her own abundance and wealth. And so anyway, my entire self-worth was wrapped up in education and my husband's success. And so I thought by stepping away from all of that, okay, so I've cleared that hurdle. My self-worth, good. I'm now identifying it more with my spirituality and connection to something greater than me. And I looked up and I thought, oh my gosh, Marianne, I've done it again. I have, keep wanting to get more certifications around coaching and other things. Writing this book, frankly, was another one. And it's like, I've just transferred this crutch for my self-worth to other things. So the self-worth journey is going to continue until I can just stand as a magnificent spiritual being in a human body, knowing my worth and value without any of the external stuff. So there's the journey for me right now that I'm most focused on.
Sunny, I totally get it, because it's the same way, even with me, I look at things and go, okay, well, I think I got this, I can do this, no problem. And then something will come up where it's like, oh, well, probably not because of this or because of that. And it's this internal dialogue that we're constantly having, but kudos to you, because they talk about, it's all about first realizing it, and I kind of think back like 20 years ago, I was kind of walking around pretty blind.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Bumping into walls, so, of my own personal limitations. Well, and so there's this whole chapter in your book you talk, and I love it, because it's, most people be like, that's an oxymoron, I don't even know about that. When you talk about the selfless act of self-love, and most people cringe when they hear that, because they're like, ooh, self-love, and it's selfless? Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and I have to say, everything I learned about self-love, I have learned from Anita Morjani. She's the one teacher, because of course I'm in a coaching circles and a spiritual community here, and so the word self-love gets tossed around all the time, or it did. And I, frankly, even though I am a huge believer in the tools and the modalities that I was discovering, self-love was the one concept that I thought was so fluffy, meaningless, and really inconsequential or unnecessary. It was like, oh, that's so airy-fairy, whatever. And I realized, oh my gosh, it is the most foundational component. And I think that the thing that brought it home from Anita Morjani's work more than anything, she talks about, this is from her second book, What If This Is Heaven? And she's exploring myths about myths that have been, I think, culturally perpetrated and continue to be passed down and just repeated. And that one of them being that self-love would be selfish. And I think, quite frankly, that the opposite is true. And so many of us have heard that golden rule about love yourself, or love your neighbor as you love yourself. And she said, but if you don't love yourself, if you are completely self-critical, if you're using really harsh, abrasive self-talk, if you are not taking care of your body, if you are not nourishing your soul, if you love your neighbor like you love yourself, for a lot of people, that would be pretty crappy. So you've really got to fill that cup for yourself first. And by doing that, it's effortless to be kind and loving to your neighbor. So love yourself first, and then you can love your neighbor in a really beautiful way. Yeah. So it is not a fluffy self-concept to me anymore, or concept anymore.
Do you feel that a lot of people that come to you for coaching and advice, that they have a tough time with the self-love component?
Absolutely, they do. I notice more than anything, really self-critical talk, and then also not believing that they have the right to ask for more, that a tolerable, dysfunctional relationship or job or whatever it is, that's all that they're worth. And so for me, the bottom line comes down to identifying yourself as being born worthy and being a really incredible spiritual being in a human body. And so if you identify with something that is so much bigger than what we have in our little human selves, then there's a natural worth that comes from that, and in a natural self-love component. But just doing it, to me, it's a practice and a belief. And so really using practices like, I love Dr. Krista Neff and her work on self-compassion. I mean, her research actually proves that kind self-talk increases motivation, increases personal responsibility. And I have so many people who come in my office and are like, but if I'm not mean to myself, I'm not the cruel inner taskmaster, I'll never get anything done. I'm like, oh, but we have research to show that's actually quite the opposite. And so really implementing those practices with clients is important. And then also really examining that belief system that underlies it all. So if you, for example, have been raised in a pretty fundamental religious setting, a lot of times they tell you if you don't believe a certain thing, if you don't accept, a savior or a guru or whatever, then you are doomed. And that is, to me, a baseline and really setting you up for low self-worth, that you are not complete unless you do what they say or believe what they say. And I think quite the opposite. And if you believe that you are born worthy and don't need anything else to make you beautiful and complete, that really can be a game changer.
It most definitely can. I mean, and just for oneself, I mean, can you imagine if two people in a marriage are, kind of working on themselves, getting to that place?
Yeah, exactly. Because I look, part of the conflict in the marriage was let me back up. Our emotions are messengers. And I love that Carla McLaren calls anger the honorable sentry, because it can be a signal or a messenger that a boundary has been violated, an interpersonal boundary. And looking back on my marriage, I was so flippin' angry all the time. But I think part of the reason that contributed to the anger was that I had handed over my entire self-worth to my husband to carry, and said, okay, so you're going to hold all the power, and through your success and all of that I don't have enough confidence in my own abilities to create things with my life, that I'm going to hand basically putting all my eggs in his basket. That to me is a gross boundary violation. I violated my own boundaries. And so I was really, really angry. So it was easy to project that on him. So yeah, if you've got people who are doing what I did, yeah, it's going to create intense conflict. But on the flip side, when you do work on really, unfortunately, it was after our divorce that we really were able to do this, but really work on yourselves and bring it all back home, so to speak, get all your eggs back in your basket, then it's possible, I think, to step out of that conflict and come to a better place.
See, this is why it's so wise to work with a coach such as yourself, because most people would never even see that. So.
It's very
myself included.
Yeah, this was only with great reflection of years that I'm able to look back and go, oh, I wasn't angry at him. I was actually angry at me for putting myself in that situation. But it was so much easier to just be angry at him and blame him.
Well, and do you feel like a lot of, people get angry at their spouse just for being themselves and not really realizing that they've done that they've put all their eggs in their spouse's basket?
Yeah, I do see this, because a lot of people will go into a marriage, and even if it is not on a conscious level, there are intuitive red flags, or intuitively this. And so, for example, a client she sensed that her husband would that he would become pretty apathetic, that he would would lose interest in working, and would become kind of her responsibility, like one of the children in a way. And even knowing this, still moved forward, and then found herself in a marriage decades later where he hadn't worked in years, and really was a huge burden in the relationship, because he really, it was actually quite sad, but she knew these things going in, but it was very easy to be angry at him. And then when we really looked at it, she thought, oh my goodness, I helped create this situation. And when we really looked at it, she'd been carrying a belief, that she was responsible for him all these years. And that created a huge amount of anger as well, resentment. And when we looked at the belief, and realized, if we turn it around to its opposite, often the opposite of our most painful, fearful thoughts are the truth. So in this case, we looked at the belief, he is my responsibility. We turned it around. He is not my responsibility. And she came up with all of these reasons why that could be true. Pretty much the most important of which was, by asking him to stand on his own 2 feet, it actually might be doing him a huge favor to allow him to step back into his life purpose and his calling, and so that he would feel more joyful, because it wasn't doing him any good to be sitting on the couch playing video games all day long. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I found that a lot of people can be holding anger that they think is all their spouse's fault, but really they've put themselves in the predicament, and it can be hard to take ownership of that. But once you do, it's not as scary as you think, and it can be actually quite empowering, because then you can change the situation.
Well, that is empowering. And, it's nice to have, again, a coach such as yourself that can walk people through that, because a lot of times when people are going through these strong emotions, it's like you can't see the forest from the trees. It's just everything's there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Marianne.
Well, so when people come to see you, because I know you've got lots of clients that come to see you for, different they're in relationships and maybe just personally, whatever the case is, what is the number one reason that unhappy people seek you out?
Well, they know sometimes, and I work primarily now, with adults who are unhappy in their relationship or marriage. But they come just knowing that something is not right. And it's interesting, Marianne, I'd be curious because, I've been doing this work now. I left the practice of law and transitioned into coaching, and I hung my shingle out in 2015. But I know that you've been in this spiritual work and for a long time. And so I am seeing a lot of people now, and I'm curious if this is your experience, a lot of people who are waking up, so to speak, like knowing that they don't have to remain in tolerable dysfunction, that they have the option and they want more. Like they're being called to something, and within the whatever it is, their relationship is not their relationship is providing a huge emotional or energetic drain, and they don't feel like they can really step into who they want to be and what they want to be doing with that. So it's like I see so many people who they can't quite put their finger on it, but they know that they're being called to something more, and they need help because it's killing them to remain in this sense of stagnation, and they want to step into what they're feeling called to. I actually relate to that myself from looking back where I was before. I felt called, and I didn't know what it would be, but I knew I had to keep moving forward toward it.
I'd agree with you on that. I think what's interesting, it's kind of exciting, is the millennial generation. I mean, they get a bad rap, but they're all about fulfillment and purpose. And so it's interesting to see how they're driving that discussion as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I tend to think, that for millennia and even just the past few generations, I don't know that the way that things were done worked so well. I mean, there was a lot of things that were not serving humans that were being done. And just because it was the way that it was done all those years doesn't mean it was necessarily the best way. And I really do like this idea that it is okay to want to be happy, that you don't have to stay in something beyond its prime or beyond its health just because, you made a commitment. You can change your mind, and that is okay.
That is so okay. I agree with you 100% on that. And it's just, it's interesting because before it was kind of, fear driven. And now you can see it's more heart-centered driven, where people are looking for their purpose and, and really declaring like, hey, I need to walk my walk that's going to serve my, my, not just feed my household, but feed my soul. Absolutely. And I think from a higher level, 50,000 foot viewpoint,
that motivation or that inspiration and moving toward that is what is going to keep our species alive. But the only chance we have, I think, is following that path.
Well, and do you think that whole fear-based thinking is what keeps a lot of unhappy couples together? They're kind of stuck in that fear?
That is the primary thing I see. It's fear. I think that I had this misconception, and I see this a lot in my practice, that, okay, if I just get clear enough, if I know that it's what I need to do, then all of a sudden the fear will go away and I'll just be able to move forward peacefully. And we're human. Our brains are wired to keep us, if something if we're safe and alive, our brains don't want to change the situation. They want to keep us safe and alive. So status quo is preferable in terms of our mind. But that is not necessarily what's going to serve us in the long run. So I see a lot of people think, okay, I just need to get clear enough, and then I won't be afraid. The fear, because we're human, is going to be part and parcel of making huge changes, and changing your relationship or getting divorced. Those are big changes that are going to make your brain fire up and say, no, just keep it the same, even if it's not healthy and comfortable, or even if it's not healthy, it's comfortable, So learning, number one, that fear is okay, that's part of it. And then number two, how to step forward courageously in the face of fear. And that can take some encouragement, perhaps, again, from a therapist, a coach, someone who's walking the path with you.
Well, and what are some tips you'd like to give our listeners with if they're in this place where they're totally stuck and they're like, not quite sure what to do? Of course, we want them to pick up a copy of your book, Unhitched, to start with. But what other tips would you give them?
So this was huge for me, and this is one of the primary things I do when I am working with a new client. So for so many years, I had made, let's say, a pro and con list, something like that, where, okay, these are all the reasons that I should stay, and these are all the terrible things that could go wrong if I go, and I was up in my head the entire time. Our bodies are the incorruptible truth tellers. Our mind is a beautiful spin doctor. The body is what's going to tell you the truth. And I found, I call it following the freedom in the book. So there was a quote that really influenced me when I was going through this, that inspired the following the freedom that I write about in the book. So it's a quote that's paraphrased from the Buddha, and it says that when you encounter a body of water, you will know it is the ocean because it tastes of salt. And in the same way, you will know enlightenment and truth because it tastes of freedom. And so freedom in the body feels like lightness, expansion. The opposite of freedom feels like contraction and heaviness. And so when I envisioned staying in the marriage, I felt a very large, heavy contraction in my heart. It was like a cinder block in there. Even though I didn't know what the future held, even though there were a lot of unknowns, and I had no idea financially what would happen, professionally what would happen. But when I envisioned myself outside of the marriage, I felt a huge expansion and lightness in my chest. So I would just tell folks out there, you don't have to know how it's all going to work out, but just envision, staying where you are. Does it feel heavy or light? And envision stepping into a different scenario, even if you don't know what it is. Does that feel lighter or more expansive? And really follow the freedom. There can be reasons that you decide to stay, even though it's not feeling light and expansive in the body, and that is okay. But just allowing yourself to go there and have the information. You don't have to act on it, but just have the information, collect it, gather it, and then you may want to act on it in the future.
I think that's some great feedback for people who are going, gosh, okay, where do I start? What do I do? But just that simple check-in is something that allows them to really start determining whether or not this is for them or not.
Yeah, and it's just like a polygraph test. For most people who are not sociopaths or psychopaths, you're going to have an immediate and automatic body response to an untruth. And living a life that is not aligned with your truth can provoke the same type of reaction in the body. And so, check in with your body. It will be the one that's not going to lie to you.
It'll always give you the right feedback.
Yeah, it will give you, you may not like the feedback, and that's okay too, but at least it will give you the feedback that you can collect and then potentially act on later.
Well, and so if someone's looking to work with you, how do they connect with you? How does that all work?
Yeah, so what I would invite people to do, I've got a website set up called unhitchedbook.com. And if they go there, I've got, they can download my book for free. That's the primary thing. And so you can get a taste of my work and see if it resonates for you. I've got a couple little videos up there. And of course, you can contact me through there. So I would just suggest that people go to unhitchedbook.com. And that's probably the best, easiest way.
Well, what a great gift to be giving the book away for free. I mean, I love my copy and no one's getting it. So everyone could go and download their own copy for free. And I think it's so great that you have the opportunity where people can work with you. Now, do they have to be in your general area, or do you work with people all over the world?
No, I work with people all over, and it's so funny, Marianne. I have an office here in the University District in Seattle, and I would say 90% of my Seattle clients, we do not meet in person. I mean, probably because we have terrible traffic here too, but I very, very happily meet with clients via Zoom and phone regularly, so anywhere works.
Anywhere works. Well, hey, that is awesome. Well, I highly suggest everyone pick up their own copy of Unhitched. And if you don't do that, make sure to go to unhitchedbook.com and download your free copy. You know, Sunny, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, I just appreciate the opportunity so much, Marianne. Thank you.
Well, Sunny, it's been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Unhitched. Unlock your courage and clarity to unstick your bad marriage. Again, if you'd like to connect with Sunny, you can at her website, unhitchedbook.com, and we'll have the link below. And also make sure to check out all the great services that she offers, as well as where you can purchase the book. I know it's available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.